From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse podcast. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, welcome back. Dr. Jason here, back to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. Super excited today. Have another guest on from Los Angeles, California. Name is Laura. Laura, how are you doing today?
I am good.
Awesome. So Laura reached out. I'm doing really good, better than I deserve. I am doing really good, better than I deserve. So I appreciate you asking. Laura reached out a couple weeks ago with some really unique questions, and I thought it would just be an awesome conversation and an attempt for me to help her, but more importantly, to maybe collapse time for a lot of people that are in a similar situation. So, Laura, if you don't mind, can you unpack your situation, just give some context so we all have a little bit of clarity on it, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I opened up de novo practice 5 years ago. Then we grew very, very rapidly. And I have 10 doctors, I have specialists. We're very multifaceted. So we do orthodontics, pediatrics, oral surgery, endo. And we grew really fast. We grew a second location that is within a couple miles of the first. Then that one has been growing very rapidly. And we are opening our third location. They're all de novos, third location in 2 months. And about a year ago, I got approached by two different people to come and partner with me, actually. So I've gone through 2 potential partners, very, very, very smart individuals. They wanted to partner with me and grow. I realized through those 2 trials with those 2 different partners that I don't necessarily need a partner. I realized I don't want to give up my business. I've put blood, sweat, and tears into what I've created. So I just needed somebody to run my practice. That way I could enjoy the things that I enjoy. So then I started looking for a director of operations to kind of run the 3 practices. Instead of posting for an application for this role, I poached. So I went on LinkedIn and searched up exactly what I wanted. So I found the corporate, I went to our corporate competitor and I looked for under director of operations and I reached out to them. They don't really respond on LinkedIn. I don't know why, but I think because they're just getting so many recruiters. So I slid into the DMs on Facebook. And I got a couple of responses, which was really cool. And I found what I think is a good fit for us. I have brought her on about 3 weeks ago. And I have no idea how to work with somebody who has this big of a background in dentistry. That's a lot. There's a lot to unpack. I didn't know if you wanted all that. But.
No, I wanted the whole thing. I want the whole story. So, just to add some additional context to what Laura shared, based on the conversation I briefly had with her before we started recording. She's a general dentist, but her primary focus, these 3 offices are focused on pediatrics and orthodontics. Sounds like she has some specialists. And you had mentioned endo and surgery. I'm assuming that's for adolescents or for adult dentition. Okay.
Yes.
And if I could just try to get a little bit more additional context, in a typical 5-day week, how many hours per week are you practicing clinical dentistry, if any?
I do maybe a half day once a month.
Maybe a half day once a month.
Maybe twice. So if a doctor calls out and I'm able to help them out and fill in, I'll do that But I see our special needs patients. So I'll do once a month, try to do once a month at my 2 locations just to also see what's happening. So
perfect. So 3 locations, roughly 10 doctors just brought on. And when I say just, help me understand when you brought this operations person
on. 3 weeks ago.
Okay. So the operations person was brought on. You, for all intents and purposes, are non-clinical at this point.
Yeah, pretty much.
How many hours per week are you dedicating to non-clinical responsibilities towards your business?
It's never ending. I've been up since 4 a.m.
so never ending. Okay, that's not the exact amount that we are striving for. Okay. We can work with that. I can work with never ending because there's only one place to go from never ending.
No, that's not true. Okay, that's not true. I probably get up at 4 every day, and almost every day, and I work maybe. Well, you know how it is. You work. I have concentrated work, and then I have the endless panic phone calls. Like the toilet doesn't work. I'm like, plunge it, so
right.
That kind of stuff. So yeah, it's probably, I would give it 6 hours a day. I guess that's
okay.
But yeah.
So let's say all in per week, we're dedicating 40 hours. Would you say that's a fair estimate?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So where do we begin? So you don't have to get into specific numbers, but how is the profitability of the organization?
We're doing great. We had last 2 years, we've had a little problem because I got pregnant, had a baby. So I was kind of like, okay, business. I was still managing it, but I was literally managing a business and opening 2 and 3 at the same time. Anybody who's done a de novo, it just like is a grab bag for when these offices open because it's permitting. It's,
right.
It's like, so I timed it. I tried to time it so that I could open my second and then have my baby. But literally I had my baby and 2 days later, the second practice opened. Right. So that was fun. So that year and a half, I kind of like, as I was building, I wasn't super focused on my business and I was just assuming things were happening the way I wanted them. So I had an orthodontist who came in and kind of didn't do great things for my business. So that really, by the way, if anybody wants to add ortho, be really smart about it because it can get you into a lot of trouble. So anyways, we had ortho and that kind of took a toll on my business, but now I'm getting a hold of my business back. So our profitability is great. We had our best quarter actually this quarter, or last quarter and all time. So I'm stoked on that. But our margins, my entrepreneurial margin is about 22%. So it's,
okay. That's great. Right. So I'm assuming you're referencing EBITDA or profitability, entrepreneurial margin. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So I feel like I have a decent amount of context. Just one final question. Your role in the company, let's call you the CEO. But it's almost like stands for Chief Everything Officer. So you're ultimately doing way more than you either have the capacity for or that you want to do or both of those, some blend of both of those. If we had to look ahead, say 24 months, what do you envision your role being in this organization?
I honestly am pretty tapped out. Like I want it to keep going and I want it to flourish, but I kind of go through phases. Some days I'm like, okay, I'm going to light it on fire. And some days I'm all in. So I need to find that balance, but yeah, I would say I still like to be the thought leader, and I like to procure locations if I ever decide to build another one. I don't know if I will, but I like to find location spots. I love seeing some old rusty building turn into a beautiful clinic. I like the build out actually. surprisingly, and managing that and designing spaces. So that's a big thing that I enjoy. And I do like the community aspect of, we do a lot for the community. So we do free dental days. We do, like, we just had a free pumpkin patch. We do, all kinds of stuff for the community because we are in a very, very, very underserved community in Los Angeles. And so I do love that part in the community relationships. And, my husband likes to say I like to stand on my box and kind of like give speeches and stuff about. So that's more of what I like to do. But I don't like the day to day.
Right. I get it. So is it safe to say, again, using this 40-hour a week time commitment, is it safe to say that if your 40 hours was filled with things that you just described, then you would feel that you could maintain that cadence, that 40 hours a week for, I don't want to say indefinitely, but it would be easier to get out of bed. It would be easier to fall asleep because you're doing things that truly light your fire those 40 hours a week, as opposed to what you're doing now.
For sure. But I also don't want to work that much anymore because I want to spend way more time with my child. I want to try to have another baby. I want to have a farm. Like I'm kind of over dentistry, like straight up. Like so, I'm here with it.
So these are important.
So
these are important conversations to have, right? So any coaching client that I work with, it's always the same, right? The cookbook's always the same. First, we put out fires, right? And there's this energy suck assistant that we have to get rid of or train up, or there's a negative cash flow. So first, we have to put out fires. But the next thing in the line in the process is defining vision, because nobody knows what the hell they are supposed to do in your organization until they have clarity on what you want. And I'm not suggesting you forecast a 20-year vision, right? That's impossible. But we need to forecast like a 3-year vision, right? So, and we're not going to be able to, this is hours of work that we would have to ultimately do together. But at a high level, if I'm hearing you correctly, your 3-year vision is to remain involved in the organization in some capacity. You're envisioning maybe 20 to 25 hours per week of being the CEO, and within the roles and responsibilities of that CEO, it sounds like it's more visionary work, like big thinker, brainstorming. Where can we put our next office? How can I increase revenue? How can I give back to the community? Like things that I can tell kind of light your fire, right?
Sure. That's all. Okay,
perfect. Which is great. Like, so, and I know you can get there. There's lots of people that can help you get there. Maybe this new operations person can help you get there. But the first struggle is like, how do we get there if we don't even know where we're going? So if we now know where we're going, right, then we can now take a step back and say, okay, this is our goal. I want to be here in 3 years. How do we get there? So you guys, you've probably heard me say this before. If you've listened to the podcast, my coaching clients hear this, ad nausea. But in any organization, we have what we call either seats or hats, right? And you can use the terms interchangeably. Let's use hats for today. So in your business, there's a clinician hat, there's an HR hat, there's a marketing hat, there's an operations hat, there's revenue cycle management, there's all of these hats that have to be worn. And I know you realize this, but when you started your first de novo, you wore all 100 hats. You were doing the hygiene, you were doing the clinical dentistry, you were doing the recruiting, you were doing the hiring, you were doing the firing. And as you got a little bit bigger, you could start to give some of those hats away because it simply wasn't scalable. So what hats have you given away? Well, you've given away the clinical dentistry hats, right? I'm assuming you no longer answer the phone, right? So you've given away a decent number of hats, but it sounds to me like you're still wearing too many. Right? You're still overwhelmed with, let's call it the 15 hats that you're still currently wearing. So you've gone from 100 to 15, but it's still like overwhelming for you, and rightfully so, right? It's been my experience personally and with people that I coach that as they grow, they just are not capable of wearing so many hats. I wear like 2 hats at this point. And I want to get you to the point where in 3 months, you're wearing, say, 1 or 2 hats, right? Okay. So the question then becomes, if I'm currently wearing 15 hats, how do I figure out how to get rid of them, right? So you have to ultimately label these hats, right? Or seats, or whatever we want to call it. And then you have to assign people to these particular hats. So you had referenced, I can't remember if it was while we were having this conversation or before we hit record, but you had referenced like some HR pain points, right?
Yes.
So just the fact that you did the recruitment of this operations person, I'm sure you negotiated a salary. I'm sure you talked about benefits. Like, this is a hat that you really don't have the capacity to wear anymore, right?
Yes, for sure.
So we have to come up with a HR hat. We have to come up with all of the roles and responsibilities associated with the HR hat. We have to come up with the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly checklists associated with the HR hat. And then we find someone to sit in that seat and wear that HR hat. Now, that could be your operations person. It could be someone else in your organization. It could be someone that you have to recruit and put in that seat to wear that hat. But that's just a simple example of how are we going to calm you down? How are we going to get you to do only the things that you love to do? You can't just stop doing these responsibilities. You have to refine them and delegate them to other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I'm up at 4 a.m. trying to do every day. Because it's hard to do something without, okay, how do I want it? Making sure that's written out.
100%. So don't reinvent the wheel. You've done some amazing things, but there's also other dentists out there that have done amazing things. And I'm not suggesting that you just reach out to someone and say, give me your job description for your HR person, and then you just carbon copy it. But it will help kind of with your creative juices of, okay, I got this HR job description from maybe your operations person because she worked at a 15 location, enterprise. So she's given me the HR description of where she used to work. I'm going to take that. I'm going to do a deep work session like you referenced. I'm going to lock myself in a room for an hour, and I'm going to turn this job description to what I know it needs to be to serve my organization. And now you have that. Now the next part, the hard part, is finding someone to sit in that seat and wear that hat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
I also think, so that's talking, at a 30,000 foot level. This is what you need to do. You need to set up an accountability chart, an organizational chart, put all these seats and hats. I could be making the wrong judgment here, but I also feel that maybe the current seats or hats that you have people wearing are not as descriptive and outlined as clearly as they need to be. So,
for sure.
For example, you should not be getting phone calls about a backed up toilet, right? And when I used to get those phone calls, I used to respond like, what the hell? Like, don't they know that, dot, dot, dot. And the reality is, and you've already referenced it, so many of your employees are young. They don't know. I have a 22-year-old daughter. I have a 20-year-old daughter. They don't know. Right. So now when I get those phone calls or those text messages or Slack messages, I'm like, oh, awesome. What an opportunity to train this person up and give them clarity on what their specific seat entails. Give them clarity on what their roles and responsibilities are. So in the situation that you described, without having the whole context, I'm telling that particular person, hey, in the future, when this happens, this is who you call. This is our trusted plumber. Or maybe you are to a size like we are, where you have a facilities manager. So again, I was wearing the facility manager's hat. I got to the point where I couldn't wear it anymore. So just like I described for HR, I created roles and responsibilities for a facilities manager. And now when an office manager has a backed up toilet, they know exactly what to do. They reach out to the facilities manager, it gets taken care of. If it's above a certain amount of money and cost, I get a message just to verify that that's what I want to do. But all of those things shouldn't be crossing your radar.
For sure. For sure. I agree.
So I don't mean to get on a soapbox and just talk like that. I'm certainly not trying to talk down to you, but I'm just trying to help you.
It's hard to when you're got to keep the train moving. And then I know I need to create these things, or like, okay, here's your list, don't bug me, like whatever. And I'm slowly doing it. But when you're still like having to move the train and create and train this new lady, that's where I'm having a hard time, is like, okay, I need to give things to her, for example, or I need to train up certain people. But I also have so much time in my life, and especially I have a baby, and it's important to me to spend time with her. So it's like, when it's just like, you have so much time, so you're like, I got to keep the train moving and create these systems and train. It's just a lot. So it's like that delegation of, how do I do it without, it's hard. So
no, it's very hard. So this is a very busy season of your life, right? Probably in most part because of your child, which is awesome, right? Yeah. But this is a very busy season in your life. I think you need to give yourself some grace from a business perspective and say, okay, this is a busy season. For the next year, I'm not focused on top line revenue. I'm not focused on growing the business. Mm-hmm. I'm not focused on shiny objects of where I can put my fourth location, right? Yeah. I'm focused on being a mom, first and foremost. And I'm also focused on getting as efficient and dialed in as possible in the confines of what we currently have. Like, again, this is vision, right? So having a conversation with your operations person, I'm just going to throw out some numbers here. We did $10 million in revenue. And I know that our goal when we set this out was to grow 20% every year, but I'm entering a different season of my life. I'm a mom first and foremost. I have 30 to 35 hours per week to dedicate to work. And I'm realizing that instead of me focusing on growth and opportunities, things I love, right? But instead of doing that right now, I am realizing that I need to do this. I need to work intimately with you, my operations person. We need to dedicate an hour a day to deep work and define these roles and responsibilities of these different seats, define checklists, set up an accountability system. That's what we need to do for this next season. And that goes down to like having an ideal week and having a calendar that you can actually be accountable to and ... So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you a little bit of clarity on what I think you ultimately need to do. I've been in your position. I've been in the weeds. there's fires everywhere and you just can never get out in front of it. But hopefully I've given you a little bit of advice on for sure what works, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
Awesome, Laura. Thank you so much for the call.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tanoory, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.